Hey, Coach, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark.
Please begin when ready.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I had another great practice. Guys have worked really, really hard this week and seem to be gaining more confidence and learning how to work harder every day and not have a bad day of practice, which we had some last year. We thought we had some earlier in the week. This is Military Appreciation Week. So each player honors someone either who has served our country in the past or currently. And they either call that person, and if that person is deceased, obviously they call a family member, and they practice this week and they play this week in honor of them. So to all of our military folks across the world that are trying to keep our country safe, thank you. And this game will be in your honor, and that's why we will be wearing the camouflage on Friday as we take the bus to go up to Charlottesville to play. Saturday night we'll learn. Have we learned how to handle success? I mean that's it'll be very obvious. It's one of those, you ask me, I don't know. I mean we'll know after we see the game on Saturday. Will we handle road games better? We haven't handled the 2 road games we've had near as well as we have home games. And that usually happens, especially with new programs and inexperienced teams. You have to learn to win on the road. And our 3 home games have been great. Our 2 away games have been just, one was bad the first half. We came back and the other at Boston College was just okay. And then we played very poorly the only night game we've had. The setup that we have right now, where we get up at 5 in the morning and we have our team meetings at 6:30 and we practice from 8 to 10, is a lot better for a noon game or a 3:30 in the afternoon game than it is an 8 o'clock at night game. Half times at 9:30 or 10, and a lot of these guys, when they have to get up at 5, are going to bed at 10:30. So we got to handle that, and we've got to learn to adjust to that as we go. And we also know that Virginia is going to play really hard. They do every week. They're well coached and they're smart kids, and they're not happy with where they are right now with their record. So we're going to get the absolute best shot. So this will be an absolute battle. I love this team. I love the way they came back at Florida State. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, they'll kill Florida State." I knew we weren't going to kill Florida State. I knew it was going to be tough. I thought we'd win, but knew it would be tough. So anybody saying that we're going to go up there and kill Virginia doesn't. They don't know very much about football. Number one, they sure don't know much about Virginia, because those guys are really going to fight. There's one other thing I thought Jeremy and I both thought would be of interest to you, and it's something that changed completely since I got out of coaching. A lot of people have asked me the differences, and I thought early signing date and all those things, but this has changed, and it's analytics. There's this book now that most people are using, and it's a really thick book, and it's a huge book that gets narrowed down for the game. And NFL teams are now using it, college teams are using it, and just about everybody that can afford it is using it. And what it is, it's called Championship Analytics Incorporated, and it's run by Rob Ash and an ex-coach. And he and his son got together and they started looking at all the computer comparisons of the 2 teams going into the game. And in the book, it tells you what they think you should do on every situation. So our Florida State time management was exactly what the book said to do. Our time management last week was exactly what the book said to do. But here's an example for you that's really interesting. If you remember the play where Sam Howell got sacked and we were 4th and 14. Well, that was about a 3rd and 7, I think. So the book said if you get 4th and 4 or less, go for it, because we're at about our 30-something yard line. It said if you're more than 4, kick the field goal. And then it said if you're more than 10, punt. So after the snap of the ball, with the analytics, those stats were telling us one of 3 things. Well, if we were 4th and 4 or less, we had a play to go for it. And then Sam starts scrambling, and it looked like we weren't going to make it, so we were going to kick the field goal. and then he gets sacked with a 4th and 14, and we have to punt. So in a span of about 15 seconds, we had 3 different decisions to make in trying to get the right personnel on the field. And that's what happens. Penn State on Saturday night with Indiana. The Penn State coaches, it looked like, told the running back to lay down and not score on the 1. They scored. That let them go up by 8 with a minute and something left. Indiana goes down, goes for 2, ties it up. If Penn State had run the clock out, they couldn't have beaten them. That's what we did because the book said it in the Virginia Tech game. We took the knee. A lot of people said, oh, Mack was being nice. Nope. I was taking the odds. And the only way they could beat us is a ball pop up in the air and them run it back, get an onside kick and score, which is unlikely. But we saw it happen in a pro game Sunday, and we saw it happen with Penn State on Saturday night. So last year with the Clemson game, the analytics do not take into account weather. They don't take momentum. They don't take injuries. Obviously, they can't do that. So in the Clemson game, they said kick the extra point. I said our best chance to win because they have a better team is to go for 2 and put pressure back on Clemson because we had 5 starters out on defense and we were totally worn out and they were the best team. So you don't always go with what the book says, but Sparky Woods simply tells me what the book says, and then I relate it. I relate what I think we should do to both or either of the 3 coordinators. In the NFL, they usually have the guy in the press box. They will not allow our guy to be in the press box with the book. He has to be on the sideline. So Sparky, all he does during the game is say, when you cross the 50, this says go for it at 4th and 3 or less. Field goal if it's more than 4th and 3. And that's what we're constantly talking about now during the ball game. That was always done with coaches. It still is to a degree. For instance, I'm sure it said for NC State to go for it on 4th and 3 when they had their quarterback pooch punt and they rolled the ball down to the 1. They decided not to, and what a great decision by them. And they deadened, the ball is dead at the 1 yard line. Then we come back and have a 99-yard drive. So, but for people who love football, and I learned in your business that a lot of people just like to gripe about football because that's the fun they have with it. They love to coach it, and that's okay. That's as long as we've got interest in football, that's important. A lot of you have to feed your fans who want it to be negative, so you have to do that, and that's okay. These are facts. And the fact is that this is what happens during the game. And we look at it very closely. We don't always go by it, but it's just, it is a very aggressive approach too. We'll be on the -40 sometime and the book will say, go for 4th and 2. And I said, man, it's in the first quarter. I'm not going to go for 4th and 2. And the last one, and then I'll answer questions. Here's one that came up Saturday. If you're in the end of the ball game, you got a minute and so left, and you go ahead by 7. Do you kick the extra point or do you go for 2? If you kick the extra point, you're up by 8. That means an Indiana can drive down and go for 2 and tie you and go into overtime. If you are go for 2 and make it and you're at 9, they can't win the game. But if you don't make it, they're at 7 and they may go ahead and kick the extra point, but they could go for 2 like Indiana did and beat you. So all of these things are decisions you have to make in about 15 seconds on the sideline during a ball game. And our staff was very uncertain about half the staff said, go for 2 and make it 9. The other half said, play for overtime. The book normally says play for overtime. They want you to extend the game because 2-point plays are hard to make. So I just thought in thinking about it last night and talking to Jeremy, everybody can afford it using it. It's real. It helps. It's not foolproof because they don't have all of the circumstances around what happens during the ball game. But when you see coaches looking at each other, we can even tell what, if NC State's using the book, we can tell what the book is probably telling them, even though we don't have their book, obviously, but we can figure out whether we think they're going to go for a 4th and 2. So if I see their book, I may very well tell Jay, they're going to go 4 downs here, Jay. So be ready. They're not going to kick the field goal. So it's just a different part of coaching for people that are really into decision making that we've never seen or had before. So and all of it's based on the previous success or not of the other team. So just like Grayson Adkins missed field goals in 2 games, he missed the first one. You can't change the book during the game, but Grayson made the last 2 field goals. So the percentages of him making them will be higher in the book's mind this week. And we get a sheet every Monday. And the other thing, and the last thing I'll say, we get a sheet on Sunday that tells us what they think we did wrong. So they grade us every Sunday and say, I wouldn't have taken that time out here. I would have taken that time out here. I think you should have gone for this 4th and 2. So it's really, really changed in a lot of coaches' minds, but everybody's using it. Coach Bateman used it at Army, and Coach Longo used it at Ole Miss. Obviously, with me being out of coaching, I'd never used it. I didn't think about it. I'd never heard about it. And so it's a vital part of what everybody's doing now, if that's of interest. Questions?
All right. Once again, if you have a question for Coach Brown, please use the raised hand function. Our first question today will come from Greg Barnes.
Hey, Mac. The analytics aspect is fascinating to me. As you said, it's kind of been a new thing. Was there any convincing that had to be done for you to kind of get on board with that?
Yes. That was one of the problems we had in our first game at South Carolina. We were sitting there and I'm saying, I know when we can take a knee. I don't need a book to say when we can take a knee. And as I've grown back into coaching, I've learned it's real and it's important. And they are facts. Now, I have to, that when Sparky will say, it says, go for 4th and 2, and you're on your minus 30 in the first quarter, I'll say the analytics are not going to be with me at the press conference after the game. And the analytics are not going to be talking to our boosters for me when we don't make a 4th and 2 on our minus 30 in the first quarter. So no, I'm not doing it. But it does say it's got you going for 2 a lot earlier, Greg, than in my life. It was always do not go for 2 until you start the 4th quarter, period, unless you were way behind like we were at Florida State. And that was it, period. This book says they want you to go for 2 sometimes when you score every time. I mean, so you have to really look at what the analytics say as compared to what in your mind is practical and best for your team and your staff. And we talk about every situation in the staff room, but it's a very different dynamic for coaching that none of us ever had till the last 3 or 4 years. And
kind of on the same front, I know a lot of coaches. Sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mac?
Yeah. Did I break? So I can't hear you, Greg. Wait a second. Shouldn't have slammed the desk.
Somehow this got muted.
Got excited.
Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, Greg.
Yeah, I'll quit slamming the desk.
Kind of along that front, I know a lot of
put some pressure on me
coaches,
here. Okay.
Some offensive coaches over the years have looked at the analytics and said, okay, we know that we're going to run 3 3rd and 7s in this game. So we're only going to practice and put that many plays in the game plan. Is that kind of how you guys do it? At least is that how Phil does it in terms of kind of whittling down by use of analytics?
Yes, even to a point, you know how many goal line plays you're going to have during the season on the average. And that's the percentage that you work on those during preseason. I mean, everything now is gotten down to percentages. It is so different and so unique. And now with the new rule of the 2-point play, that you have to start having 2-point plays. We needed 4 or 5 last year. Obviously, you're working on more 2-point plays than ever before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next question from Art Chansky.
Hey, Mac. This is your first trip to Charlottesville since 1996. How long did it take you to get over that game, or are you still not over it? And can you talk about the Keldorf pass, the Octavius route, and the Harris interception, and that terrible loss?
Yeah, you never get over them. So people remember losses; they don't remember wins. I mean, that's what happens. People see me now and they say, "Worst loss in North Carolina history." Well, God, we've had a bunch of losses, so that'd be hard to stick in there. But it was a poor decision. I remember we made it. We get the ball. We're up 17-3. I think there's about 9 minutes left in the game. We've dominated the game. I remember there's a lot of students behind our bench that are trying to start a fight with our players, and our players aren't handling it well, and they're starting to fight. So I actually went back there because security wasn't back there and tried to stop the fight, which nobody knows or remembers or cares about. And then we don't make anything on first and second down. It's a 3rd down and 9, I think. And one guy said, let's run a draw and kick the field goal. And another guy said, let's run a screen or a slant, and it's tipped and intercepted and run back for a touchdown. So we still had a lot of time to win the game. It was 17-10. So everybody blames that call. We would have gone up 20-3 instead of 17-3. Would we have won the game? I don't know. We stunk the last 9 minutes on both sides of the ball. So, but yeah, those are ones that I remember for the rest of my life. And if we want to go to the Texas Tech one, where we were number 1 in the country and lost with 3 seconds, we can go to that one. Or if we want to go, I've got a bunch of them, Art. That's and in fact, nobody even thinks about the 20 I lost the first 2 years. They just think about the one I lost and we lost 1, which is very interesting.
Well, that one was significant because I guess Carolina hadn't won in Charlottesville in a long time. And that seemed to be, a little bit of a bugaboo for the Tar Heels. So that's the one I remember most.
All losses are bad. If you don't think so, lose to Florida State. Nobody thought that was going to be bad till we lost to them. Then it's the worst loss in the history of North Carolina football. Then lose to Virginia. Lose Saturday night. Oh my God, he did it again. He did it again. He can't. He just can't win up there. George Wells was pretty good when we went up there a lot of times. He was first in the country, and Florida State was in the top 4 for 14 times. So it's not about me Saturday night. It'll be about those kids, and hopefully we win.
Well, Lee Pace was crying on my shoulder that night. I had to console him. So that's what I remember about that.
Yeah, I was crying on mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next question comes from Taylor Vipolis.
Hey, Coach. Jacoby Criswell played, I think, 10 snaps against State, and they all appeared to be design run plays. How do you balance wanting to see what that second unit can do while also making sure that as a staff you're calling plays that they're comfortable with?
Yeah, Taylor, I talked to Phil about it. We want to run the regular offense when our second group's in there, especially with our quarterback, because he needs to throw some. We were down on their end. We had young offensive linemen in there too, and Phil just wanted to do what we would have done in that normal situation, and that was run the ball. And we were running it successfully. In fact, we probably would have run out the clock if we hadn't had a bad snap in there. But that's something that we need to do is get the more inexperienced quarterback some work in their normal game plan.
And then a question along that same line with that second unit. When you see a British Brooks truck defender on the sideline and the first person over there to celebrate with him is Michael Carter, how proud does that make you as a coach to see that kind of culture in your program?
Taylor, it's the most fun thing that you have when the guys just pull so hard for each other, and especially in their same room, or Clyde Pender forcing their quarterback out of the pocket to the right as a freshman that hadn't played very much, and Des Evans jumping on a fumble that's on the ground. Those things help so much, and I think that's one of the reasons practice has been so much fun this week, because guys played, they had success. Especially in a rival game where they might not have been expecting to play. And that's just something that we've got to continue to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Andrew Jones.
Hey, Coach, going back to analytics, how much does gut instinct factor in when you're juxtapose that against the analytics?
Well, Andrew, it has to factor in because they didn't know we had 5 out against Clemson, and they didn't know we were worn out completely. So in that, I'm sure analytics didn't expect us to be 1 down with 1:19 left to go in the game. So you have to go with your gut. And I'll tell Sparky sometimes, he'll say, Coach, it's saying go for it here. And I'll say, I can't, I'm not. Field goal. We're gonna kick this. So we've got hundreds of years of experience on our staff, and I'll take their suggestions before I'll take the analytics. But the analytics just tell us what they think is the best thing to do. Then we have to make a decision based on what we know about our team and the look in Sam Howell's eye at the time, or how tired our defense is, or whether we trust our kicker at that point or not. All of those things are factors that will override the analytics if it comes up.
Is there a player sequence in the last 18 games that you've coached where you thought, wow, this analytics stuff really does work?
Yeah, last year against Duke, we were, it was a 4th down and 3, I think, maybe a 4th and 4, right at the end of the game, 3 minutes left. And we're up by 6. I would have kicked the field goal my entire life and make it 9. It just makes sense to me. And they said, go for it, because if you score the touchdown, the game is over. Because you're going to be up by 13, and then you'd go for 2, obviously, to try to make it 14. So we went for it. We made it. And then all we had to do was try to kill the clock and score, and we fumble 2 plays later and still give them a chance to win the game. But that was a time where I would have definitely kicked the field goal, and maybe we were up by 3. That's what it was. We were up by 3, and I would have taken the 6, and then they couldn't have tied us with a field goal. They said they can beat you with 7 if you kick the extra or kick the field goal. So what you should do is go ahead and score, and let them try to tie you, because you're trying to keep them from winning the game. So it was a 3-point difference. 4th and 3, we went for it, we made it, to try to go up in a situation where we would be up by 10 instead of up by 6.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And 7 could beat you. So that's an example of where I walked out of the stadium last year and said, you know what? I wouldn't have done that, but I get it. And I think they're right. And then every Sunday you get you get what they think you did well. And then I read it, and they think what you messed up. And then I get the same thing with you all, because I come on here and you all tell me, usually don't tell me what I did well, because I tell you what we did well. But then you tell me everything I did wrong. So I have to take what you think compared to the analytics and really try to figure out, gosh, my life's confusing because I've got a lot of help.
You need to pick at some of our typos next week. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Next question comes from Nicole Arbach.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Mac. So my question is kind of working on a broad story about just COVID protocols and kind of how they're all working out. So, I mean, every coach in America has had at least, a player test positive and then return. So what goes into that? I think everyone outside of the program doesn't quite understand, like from a conditioning standpoint, that, all the pieces before they can just pop back into a game. It's not like, okay, day 11, like, boom, you can play a game. Can you kind of like just discuss like what that period is actually like for those of us who aren't seeing it?
Yes, Nicole, and I don't want to jinx this, but right now we haven't had a positive player miss a game.
Okay.
So knock on wood, we got tested right after practice today. So, I mean, tonight we could have 10 players that are positive and can't play in the game. But I don't like the fact, Nicole, that every conference has a different protocol. I don't like that. I mean, our kids will ask, why does this league let you play after a positive and then a negative? And why does this league keep you out 21 days? And what our protocol is if you have a positive on your test, you have isolation for 10 days, starting from the day that you tested positive. Isolation means you can't see anybody, you can't be out of your room, food has to be brought to you and slipped under the door basically. So you can be on Zoom meetings, you can go to class obviously with your virtual classes, but you can't do anything. And then after that 10-day period, you have to have your complete heart checkup. And then they work you back into practice if your heart checkup says it's okay to do that. So you're probably missing 2 weeks, basically. If you are a contact tracer, then weirdly enough, you're in quarantine, which is basically the same thing for 14 days. And I said, if you're a contact, how can you be in longer than if you're a positive? And they said, because they're not really sure when the virus might kick in for you. They say it can kick in over 2 weeks. So they have to be quarantined and away from everybody for 14 days, because if they test negative when they get out, because they never tested positive, they do not have to go through the heart checkup and they can return to practice immediately.
So just quickly, like the conditioning standpoint, when someone's been, in a hotel room or, out not playing sports for 2 weeks, like how does that work? How long is that? Like, how do you guys make sure that they, can get in shape?
That's turned over to our medical staff and our strength coaches, and they test them when they get back, and they tell us how much they think they can practice, when they can practice, and they do put limits on them because they can't do anything during that quarantine or the isolation period. They can watch video of practice. You can even work it out now where you can see practice live. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. So we can have a player sit and watch the entire practice and hear his coach teaching while he's in quarantine or isolation.
Wow.
So they can stay up mentally, but obviously they get behind physically.
Thanks, Mac.
Thank you, Nicole. It's a real interesting time. And there's so many differences of opinions with different doctors and different leagues. I think, again, that's why I'd love to see us have a commissioner of college football that everybody would have the same guidelines and all the kids would be treated the same. And that's sure not happening with this virus.
All right, let's go to Alyssa Ray.
Hey, Coach, it looks like for the most part, UVA has a pretty balanced offense. What impresses you out of that side of the ball? And I know it's a different animal without Bryce Perkins, obviously.
Yeah, Alyssa, I've coached against Bronco a number of times, and they play hard. He's an outstanding leader. He's always so positive about everything. And they're unique in what they do. I mean, they faked a punt on us last year at our 40 or something, or our 30 going in. And it was a huge play that I think they threw a screen, best I remember. But they can run it. He's using 3 different quarterbacks, and quarterback runs have hurt us. They're very physical as a team, and they're a team that plays hard every week. So I really think what college football has become is everybody tries to run the ball, and when you bring safeties down and put too many in the box to run it, they're throwing one-on-one shots outside. And everybody's trying to say that's a 50-50 ball outside. The teams that are winning make it an 80-20 ball. And that's your corners or their receivers. I mean, but that's what the game's become. If the other team can run the ball, you're going to lose, most likely. Virginia Tech ran it on us, but we scored enough points, it didn't matter. So you've got to try to at least slow down the run. It's funny now, offensive coordinators have a lot more advantages than defensive coordinators, but they got hard jobs because everybody calls plays. Defensive coordinators now, it's so crazy out there with RPOs and screens with people blocking downfield, and you've got the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and you can do anything you want. The rules are more favorable to the offense. Defensive coaches are trying to get a fumble, a penalty, or a field goal. If a defensive coach forces somebody to kick a field goal now, they think it's a positive. That was never that way. Don't let them score. Well, now it's hold them under what the offense is getting, and the special teams coach has no chance. I mean, if they play great all day and there's one mistake, everybody says, "Oh, special teams are horrible." So, but I really think that's what college football has become, and and Bronco's been a master at being physical, both sides of the ball. They got 8 starters back on the defense from last year that won the Coastal. They've got always have a good offensive line. They're well taught. They've got a tough running back, and the quarterback can run and throw. So I think he's taking advantage of all those rules by coaching and doing a good job with it.
Speaking of the run game, I know you guys held NC State to 34 rushing yards. How pleased are you with your run defense, and how do you hope to build off that game?
Alyssa, I was very pleased against Syracuse and Boston College, and then I think Ross asked us one day, and I said, we haven't had anybody really try to run it. Why is your run defense good? And then Virginia Tech just absolutely took over, and then third and fourth quarter just ran up and down the field, and that bothered me. And then Florida State's quarterback ran it better than I want him to, and their running back. And then last week we just stepped back up and played really, really well. So I really feel like that's a huge part of who we are here moving forward. If Virginia can run the ball on Saturday night, we'll get beat.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
All right, let's go over to CL Brown.
Hi, Mac. I was wondering, with another 8 o'clock start on Saturday, if there was anything you planned on doing differently from that Florida State late night to, I don't know, kind of maybe have them engaged from the start.
Yeah, I've mentioned it to them, CL. Number one, I said maybe you're supposed to fall asleep the second half because that's when you go to bed, not the first half. But it seemed like we slept the first half and woke up the second half, so I can't figure all that out. But we're going to take the bus up a little bit later, so we'll eat here. We'll drive to Charlottesville, and that's not comfortable with an N95 mask, and they can't eat or drink for 3.5 hours. So we'll probably stop and let them have a break halfway up, and then just go to bed, and then let them sleep in a little bit longer on Saturday. And then we're going to keep them up and keep them moving all day with meetings throughout the day, because the worst thing they can do, all college football players are tired this time of the year, and it's going to be a cool day. Worst thing you can let them do is let them lay there and sleep. And we have sent them teamwork messages every day this week. Hey, it's 6 o'clock and you're pulling up to the stadium right now. Hey, it's 7 o'clock and you're walking out on the field for pregame right now. Hey, it's 8 o'clock. We just kicked it off. It's 9:30. It's halftime. So think about starting the second half. Hey, it's 11:15. It's the fourth quarter. So I'm sure they're sick and tired of hearing us talk about being more prepared for an 8 o'clock game at night. But that's we're just trying to make them aware of it, and telling them whatever you did for Florida State, don't do it again.
And going back to the analytics that you were speaking of earlier, how much of the fun does that take out of coaching? I mean, just having numbers, cold numbers about what should and shouldn't be done.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have told you all. Those are facts, and those aren't as much fun as human error and brain. See, I don't think it hurts. I think it really, you still get to make the decisions that you want to make, but it makes you think. And the hard thing is it makes you think when you've got about 10 seconds and you have to make quick decisions. And you'll see some people using timeouts because they're arguing over the book. and that's different than it's ever been before. Oh, just call timeout because we're about to run out of time here and we don't know what to do. But I do know that now when I get the answer from the book, I definitely take time to consider it. And I always get the answer at least before the series, for that series. So Sparky will say right now, before first down, before the snap of the ball, he will say, they're saying go for 4th and 4 or less in this part of the field. So I will walk down and tell Phil Longo, we're going to go for 4th and 4 or less now. So you got 4 downs, and that changes your play selection. Or I'll say it over the headset. And then if it says go for 4th and 3, and you end up losing yards and you end up 4th and 4, then I'm probably going to punt or kick the field goal. So those things help you. But but I've been aggressive my whole career. So I'm more like the book than I would have been before. But like the Clemson decision, I changed. The Duke decision, I went with. And I think it just depends on it. It gives me extra thought process when I'm sitting there thinking about what we need to do to be successful.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, CL.
All right, next question from Aaron Beard.
Hey, Mac, I wanted to revisit something I've heard you talk about at various stages along the way, and part of it and framed around, you talked about things that you didn't really think about in your previous tenures, like the voting registration, the importance of that, and now that you're back. You've talked about mental health several times, and it did seem like for a long time you'd hear mental health in terms of sports psychologists with performance. How much do you talk about it now in the broader sense with the players addressing it regularly in terms of anxiety, everyday life, just trying to get through the week? And how much less of a stigma do you think there is now about that for players asking for help?
Aaron, we talk about it all the time. I mean, it's, and you're right. Many years ago, we didn't say much about it at all. We had a friend lose his son. Gosh, it was 2 years ago in the mountains of North Carolina. And the son was a dear friend of ours. And we came immediately back to our team. And this was long before COVID, and said, guys, this just happened. And this was a happy young man that took his life. And so if any of you are down or struggling, or talk to me, we had Dwight Hollier, who's in charge of wellness there. We had the number up for a hotline for help. Come on, man, don't talk to somebody. Don't take your life. And if you get bad feelings or down, depression's a real thing. And that's even worse now, Aaron, with COVID, because the stats all say that drinking's up, addictions are more of an issue, counseling's up, mental health, spousal abuse, all the things that are really, really bad in our lives are up higher than ever before. And these kids have the stress of COVID. They've got the stress of the election. They've got the stress of football. And what made me realize that we should have come back to coaching is last year. After that meeting, Jake Lawler comes in my office and said, Coach, you saved my life. And I mean, you're talking about getting you, it got me. And he just said that I was the guy that was sitting there thinking about doing something bad. And you woke me up, and he's coming to practice tomorrow. In fact, he's doing really well out in LA. And so Aaron, it just reinforces the fact that you never know. We could have one struggling right now that I'm missing. And I tell the coaches, don't ever let a player leave the field angry. Don't ever let a player leave the locker room angry and go home. If you've jumped all over him, you make sure he's okay emotionally, and you get back on track with him before he leaves. And then we talk about it every day. And we'll have someone, we'll have a counselor come in on Sunday and talk to our team about mental health, and then talk about the election, because that may be really emotional for some players, not for all. But and next week will be crazy because the NCAA is having everybody take Tuesday off, and Tuesday's our toughest work day. So we're going to have a game with Virginia that'll be physical on Saturday night. We'll get home at 3 a.m. We'll have to limit our practice on Sunday, and then we're going to have to practice Monday, which is a really quick turnaround for these guys in such a physical game. But we're going to have a mental health counselor in there talking to our team on Sunday just about all of the issues right now in our country and our world.
Thanks, Mac.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, we'll close up today. Final question from Brendan Marks.
Hey, Mac, thanks again. And not to pivot too hard, I know that was a very serious topic, but back to the analytics. You mentioned how that's something that you're communicating with Coach Longo. What sort of level of insight do the players have into how the analytics affect those decisions? For example, would Sam know going into a certain drive that, okay, if I get past the 50, I'm going to have 4 downs compared to 3. I can do certain things. Is that something that they're conscious of in the moment, or not necessarily?
Brendan, we don't talk to them about the book. We don't talk to them about analytics. Normally, they know I want us to be aggressive. So anytime we cross the 50, we've got 4 downs. And then if it's 4th down and 7 and we're in field goal range, I'll probably kick a field goal. But if it's 4th and 2, we're going to go for it. People said, well, you shouldn't have gone for the 4th and 1 at Florida State. Absolutely. Every time. Should have made it. If you can't make 4th and 1, you got Javonte Williams. Come on, man. But I'm going to go for it. I want 7 points. I don't want 3. And so the one time Sam asked me, we were getting ready to score them. We got 56 points on Virginia Tech. And I said, Sam, let's take, there's a slow knee. There's a quick knee. There's a make a first down and get down. There's a make a first down and go to the 1 and get down. I mean, it's all very, very complicated. So you don't want to confuse the guys' minds. But I said, Sam, take a knee. And he said, what? Why? He said, Coach, we're about to score, man. We're at the 3-yard line. I said, just take a knee. I'll explain it later. And then on Sunday, I actually went over with the team. The odds of this happening are not very good, but all we want to do is win. And we don't have to score 63 as compared to 56. We're fine. Let's win and let's get home. And I explained to them that here's why they said take the knee, because of all the things that could possibly happen in a game. I saw a coach at Baylor in his first year, and there was 1 play left in the game. There was 8 seconds, and he was up 6-0, and he handed the ball off to his tailback. And the ball popped out like Art's game at Virginia that he's still struggling with emotionally. And the ball popped out, and the safety caught it and ran it back for a touchdown and kicked the extra point. So they lose 7-6 because they didn't take a knee. And what are the odds of your tailback fumbling? What are the odds of it bouncing up in the air, the safety getting it and scoring with it? But again, you'd rather win 13-0, but 6-0 is fine. Get your win, get home, correct all the mistakes you had, and start over. And that's where analytics have really come in, I think, more than anything else. And the weirdest thing is that we saw it with Penn State, Indiana. We saw it was at the Falcons. There was a game in the pros I didn't see, but they told me it happened on Sunday. So these things are real. And the more we can study it and be comfortable with it and not let it control your life during the game, still be you, have your personality and know your team. But at the same time, we can win games because of this. Duke game last year, we would have won if easily if we hadn't fumbled, because we went for a 4th and 3 and we made it. And again, that's when I said, okay, I got you, book. I hear you, man. I'll listen because you were right. And I get why you were right. And I didn't get it. And that gets back into that long conversation we had yesterday of, if you're up by 7, do you kick the extra point or do you go for 2 with a minute left for the other team? And they said, well, the book's going to tell the other team to kick the extra point and go to overtime. So you're okay if you don't make it and you're up by 7. But if you go for it and you're up by 9, then game's over. So, and it was really, really interesting that I'm still not sure what we would do. I think it depend on how good the offense was on the other team. But sitting in that room with a lot of experienced coaches that are really good at what they do, we had a split room. I'd kick the extra point. I'd make it 8. I'd make them tie us by going for 2. I'd go for the 9 because then they're going to kick the extra point anyway because they've got a book and their book's going to say tie and go to overtime. So it's those are all really, really interesting questions for football nerds like me that love thinking about this stuff that we haven't had before. We've had these discussions, but we've never backed it up with stats, and that's what this group is doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mac.
Thanks, Coach. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you all. We'll see you on Saturday or.
I'm going to tell them what the schedule will be next week.
All right.